In a time when the sun's golden rays bathed the streets of Jerusalem in warmth, and the chants of ancient prayers danced through the city's holy alleyways, a world steeped in faith and tradition flourished. For generations, a building stood as the Jewish nation's symbol of divine connection, where their faith and devotion were practiced through time. But shadows of imperialism would eclipse the sun's rays during an era when uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Like storm clouds gathering on the horizon, a tumultuous event that would forever alter the course of a nation loomed. Hello, and welcome to Impactful Moments, where we explore some of the most, you guessed it, impactful moments in human history. In this video, we will discuss the destruction of the first Jewish temple, one of the most tragic and course-altering events of one of the world's most influential religions. The Jewish people traversed a remarkable path, beginning with the exodus from Egypt through their inhabiting the land of Israel. Their legacy, shaped by centuries of trials and triumphs, found its seeming culmination in the grandeur of Jerusalem and the establishment of their temple, completed by King Solomon in 957 BCE. This was not merely a structure of stone and wood, but rather the physical embodiment of their covenant with God, the epicenter of their religious practices, and a symbol of their national identity. Concurrently, the Chaldean Babylonian Empire experienced its own rise as a culmination of centuries of political maneuvering and military expansion. Tracing back to the early Mesopotamian city-states and the legacy of King Hammurabi, it wasn't until the Neo Babylonian Empire, under King Nebuchadnezzar II, that Babylon would reach the zenith of its powers. Nebuchadnezzar's reign was marked by significant territorial conquests, bringing him into contact with neighboring regions, including the Kingdom of Judea. This imperial rise set the stage for pivotal clashes with the Jewish people, who resisted external dominance due to deep-rooted political and religious differences. In the generations leading up to the temple's destruction, the Jewish people had already experienced a schism. The 10 northern tribes had broken away from the Kingdom of Judea, forming the separate Kingdom of Israel. Ultimately, both factions had turned away from God's commandments, engaging in idolatry and social injustices. The Assyrians had already exiled the 10 northern tribes in 722 BCE, scattering them across their empire, and the Kingdom of Judah faced similar moral and spiritual challenges. This prompted warnings of impending destruction by generations of Jewish prophets, calling for repentance and a return to God's ways. Those warnings began to play out following continued political tensions between the Jews and Babylonians. Tensions that included a failed Jewish alliance with Egypt against Babylon in 601 BCE, a Babylonian siege of Jerusalem, and the dethroning and deportation of the Judean king Jeconiah following that siege in 597 BCE. A decade later, the Judeans, under King Zedekiah, attempted another rebellion that resulted in a violent defeat. This led to a second siege of Jerusalem and resulted in terrible devastation and starvation of the city's populace. Roughly 2 years into this siege, the Babylonians breached the walls of Jerusalem, and over a 3-week period thoroughly destroyed the city, culminating with the destruction of the temple on the 9th and 10th days of the Jewish month of Av. The destruction of the temple in 586 BCE was a symbol of divine judgment, a culmination of repeated warnings, and a stark reminder of the consequences of straying from their faith. The Babylonian destruction of the Jewish temple left a deep void within Jewish society, marking the end of both its central pillar of religious practice as well as its self-rule under the central authority of a monarch. This sparked immediate and ultimately generational yearning for a messianic figure from the Davidic line who would re-establish Jewish leadership in a new temple era. The Babylonians didn't just destroy the Jewish temple, they also displaced a majority of Israel's remaining Jewish population, beginning a long line of Jewish diasporas. This exile or diaspora transformed Jewish identity and spirituality, fostering a deep sense of longing for Jerusalem and their lost homeland. The Babylonian destruction of the Jewish temple in 586 BCE marked the loss of the spiritual center of Jewish life, a place where the divine presence was believed to dwell. it remains the most pivotal spiritual tragedy in Jewish history, a wound that continues to shape the memory, traditions, and identity of the Jewish people thousands of years after its occurrence. While there was a second temple that stood for 420 years, it never reached the spiritual heights of the first temple, and it too was destroyed in the year 70 AD by the Romans. Jews today still hope for a time of practice that emulates or even surpasses the spiritual connection of the first temple. Each year, on the anniversary of the destruction of both Jewish temples, Jews observe Tisha B'Av, meaning the 9th day of the month of Av, through fasting, mourning, and communal introspection. During the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av, Jews also engage in solemn reflection, prayer, and remembrance, reflecting on the historical tragedies that have befallen the Jewish people throughout the generations, with the destruction of the temple at the forefront. As noted, the Babylonian destruction also marked the beginning of a series of diasporas that have spanned millennia. Following the Babylonian exile, Jewish communities dispersed across the ancient world. Subsequent exiles, such as the Roman diaspora in 70 CE, following the destruction of the Second Temple, further scattered the Jewish populations. The legacy of these diasporas has had a profound impact on Jewish identity, contributing to the development of rich and diverse Jewish traditions and communities worldwide. As a silver lining, the Babylonian destruction and relocation also reinforced the ideas of Jewish peoplehood and the importance of maintaining a distinct Jewish identity even in the face of adversity. It brought about a sense of unity among Jewish communities, transcending geographical boundaries and helping the nation maintain its heritage through hardships and oppression, a characteristic that has remained with the Jews throughout the millennia. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us to continue creating captivating, impactful historical content. Thanks for watching.